Before we begin the evening, I'd like to ask Iryah Mordechai to come up and say a few words. The evening is in memory of her husband, Yair Mordechai.
I think somebody always has to say, because I just did it, because one of these years my phone rang while I spoke. So like phone's silent. It's that time. I think my voice is pretty radiophonic, but I'll fix this anyways. 8 years ago, after moving to Yerushalayim from Kibbutz Shluchot in the north, while preparing for my retirement from the bench, I was fortunate to reconnect with my once upon a time babysitter, who was already Rabbanit Rachelle Sprecher Fraenkel. And I was, through her, was able to connect to Matan. And in the course of preparing for my retirement, began to learn here. First in the Ptifta and then in the Metifta for a number of years. I cannot say I really acted like a yeshiva bacher, kind of more like a gvir, but in any case, I did spend a number of years coming and learning. My connection to Matan has existed ever since. I really feel it was very fortunate. At the time, I remember walking into Rabbanit Bina's office and having a talk with her and saying that over time, as I was coming and as I was winding down my career as a judge, I felt like I was coming in from the harsh cold to a warm Torah world that really felt like somehow climbing back a bit into a womb, which was really how I felt. And I know it really touched her, but I was really expressing how I felt. I am fortunate for a number of years already to dedicate the learning tonight in my late husband's memory. I always like to put a picture to the name. So again, I will show Yair to you. I have spoken about him over the years in here, and so people have gotten to know him a bit, about what a warm and vibrant, loving person he was, and about the heroic way in which he chose to live his life and in which he did not choose to lose his life, Hashem Yikom Damo, but he did prevent a much larger pigua in the kibbutz at the time, and it all happened this morning, the morning of today, when everybody was eating breakfast in the sukkah. His strengths have carried me through the years. I'm kind of known as being pretty strong, but for some reason today, I cannot say I was very strong. Today, we never know how our losses come up on us. But today I woke up at 8 o'clock and began reliving that morning. And I relived it a number of times today because it's not all in our power. So I'm not presenting myself with my usual strengths today. However, I know that in the last 23 years since his loss, and since I became a widow, I and almost everyone in this room have experienced their own losses, because I was a lot younger then, but in the meantime, we all experience our losses. It's part of us going on and living, which is kind of an upside, but we carry those that are lost to us. And I would hope that most of our losses were not as tragic and traumatic as mine and as Rachel's. But nonetheless, those people that aren't with us, we miss them. Yair's neshama should have an aliyah. But I ask you all to think of those as well that aren't here with you, because this is what I've been thinking about all day. So I'm sharing this experience with all of you. And I would ask you to bring them with you this evening. Just bring them into your thoughts and have them join us here tonight and invite them to our learning and to be with us. What an olam we can be. Chag Sameach, המשך חג שמח. Iryah, over the years, we learned about the strength it takes to be vulnerable. So, thank you. So, it had some kind of long, fancy. It's this? I don't think it's this. Yeah, this is the yeah. Okay. So there was some kind of fancy name in English, something about notes and messengers and agency. They asked for these titles way before I know what I'm going to teach. Eventually, it is about that, but in Hebrew, I called it Al Din V'Din Atzmi. And we'll start with an interesting historical argument that went on around Hoshana Rabbah. So Shadal, okay, Shmuel David Lutzato, he lived in Padova, Italy, and like 1800 to 1865, and he was a person of dikduk and of pshat, and a poet and a philosopher and a rabbi, and the head of the seminar Rabbanim in Padova, and part of a part of the enlightenment of Chokhmat Israel, people like eventually Tzunz and others, but also in our terms, a very orthodox person, a very huge Talmid Chacham, a very important Parshan. And he writes this little book that's called Vikuach al Chokhmat HaKabbalah. Okay? And he starts out the book with a story. He says, this all happened, the book I think came out 1832, something like that. So this all happens on the night of Hoshana Rabbah. He actually says what year. And I was with a bunch of people, I'm translating as I go, you can look at the Hebrew version. And I was with a group of people that wouldn't sleep, so they can do the tikkun of Hoshana Rabbah. And one of the group was, I was sure this is me, so it's not me, it's someone who's it's like being a host and putting the first stain on the table. So, and one of the people in this group was some person that came over from Poland. I didn't know him because he was new in our town, and he sat right on my right. And as we were doing the tikkun of Hoshana Rabbah, and the tikkun of Hoshana Rabbah is, they're different texts, but mostly it's learning Sefer Dvarim, okay? But then it goes, usually there's Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, and Kabbalah eventually.
and he reads with us Sefer Mishneh Torah, the whole Devarim, and all of Tehillim, be'ahava, beratzon, bechavanat halev, with all intention, like a person reading the Torah. But as we got to reading the Iryah is parts of Sefer HaZohar, something strange happens. He falls asleep. And as we finish learning, he wakes up from his sleep and he tells me, באמת אמרו חכמים, לא עברי לילה אלא לשנתה. The night was created for sleeping. I said, but they also said if the night was created for learning, and they also said whoever learns at night, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets a chut shel chesed on his face in the daytime, and it says that Talmidei Chachamim that learn Torah at night, we call as if they were working in Bet HaMikdash, and it says in any home that you don't hear some Torah coming from its through the windows, literally it said that it would burn. You're like, yes, night was created to sleep for some of us, but there are many other things you can say. So the person tells me, but Kohelet said, lachol zman ve'et lachol chefetz. And if they said all those statements that you said about sleeping, they said in Yomot Chol, they didn't mean in the holidays. Because, like we say, Sheina b'Shabbat is a special pleasure, and if it's a special pleasure on Shabbat on the daytime, at night it's an obligation, and now it becomes harsh. He says, "V'atem mechalelin et hakodashim u'mevazim et hamoadot, v'te'anu et nafshotechem b'yamim shene'emar b'hem v'hayita ach sameach." Now he's already attacking this whole concept of Hoshana Rabbah. He's saying not only are you sleeping, some of you do ta'anit in Hoshana Rabbah, and you're treating this like some kind of mini Yom Kippur, you're desecrating the holidays, and there's a commandment to be happy. Okay, a few times. So I answered him, how would we not wake up at night to still our hearts before Hashem, since we know that in this seventh day of the holiday, it's the finishing of the din of the world. Okay, and this is the quote that he's going to bring eventually. It's originally from the Zohar. Ptkin nafkin mibei Mלכא kasher amru rabotenu b'Zohar HaKadosh. So he said, we all know this. We grew up on this concept that at this point in time, it's the final stop of the process of din that started in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And at this point, Yom Kippur, there were notes written, and they were kind of kept in a bag, and now Hoshana Rabbah is the time where they're conceptually dropped in the mailbox. Like they're given to the messengers. Once the messengers leave, there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so this is a serious Yom Din, and we're all very tense and worried, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. And as we spoke. We left the house where the tikkun was, and each one of us went over to their home. And that person didn't go home. He just stuck with me, kind of stalked me. לטרוד אותי בטענותיו, and kept on he had kindness to say, claims. But actually, to be more accurate, he kept silent as long as we were surrounded by people, but once we were left alone, he started spilling everything he thinks about this minhag. Yeah, Veifen ko v'cho v'erek en ish, right? These are quotes from Yosef. Okay. ויפתח את פיו ואומר, ואי לכם חייבי שאתם כופרים בדברי קדמוננו אבות העולם מייסדי התפילה שהתקינו לומר ביום הכיפורים קץ מחילה וסליחה, ואתם אומרים שאין גזר דין נחתם עד יום הושענא רבה, ולא עוד אלא שאתם מכחישים דברי התורה עצמה שאמרה כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לתאר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני השם תתארו. ואם כבר נחתמה הסליחה ביום העשור, איך יהיה סיום הדין ביום הושענא רבה? So after he made sure nobody's listening, he started saying, this is literally kfirah. what are you doing? You know, Torah says that it's on Yom Kippur, and in the davening we say it's Hetz Mechila, it's the final, and you say it's all in Hoshana Rabbah. How could that be? He also had cut it out, but he also had a taina about not putting on tefillin and Chol HaMoed. Another argument. And then Shadal, you know, he's telling the story like it happened personally to him. So he said, so as he was arguing with me, I ended up answering him. I choose to believe in the Zohar. Just like most of Chachmei Israel and the rabbis, since its discovery, since its higaloto, since its what? Hidgalut, revelation, which we should say is towards the end of the 13th century. Everybody accepted it, or most everybody accepted it. And if you want to put yourself within קטני אמונה, what does it have to do with me? ובתוך כך מיהרתי להיכנס לביתי, וסגרתי הדלת בעדי, וישכב עד אור הבוקר. Okay, so it's like you can feel how it's a very threatening argument. It threatens some very basic beliefs. ואשכים בבוקר ואלך לבית התפילה, ובשובי ללכת לביתי, נטפל עמי האיש ההוא ונתן לי שלום. Here he is again. אמרתי לו, אתה זה האוחר אשר באת לעקור לבבי בספקותיך, לך ושלום, מה לי ולך? Oh, you're coming again? You want me to fill my heart with doubts? What? So the guy answers him, and he says, I heard you're a lover of truth. And we should know about Shadal. Shadal, in his philosophy, nothing matters more than truth. And a person who loves the truth doesn't just send someone away without listening. So I argued back. I see you're one of these Mesitu Mediach types. You just want to, you know, like the snake in Gan Eden. I don't want to listen to you. Go back and forth. And besides, yesterday you were attacking me, and I was so confused that I didn't answer you what I should have answered you. So the guy says, "Oh, really? Tell me, bring it on." And he says, I should have answered you that already the Ramban that never saw the Zohar speaks of this. And before the Ramban, there's, or not before, but approximately the same time, the Rokeach and the Sefer Chasid. He has a few proofs why the things I should have said yesterday. It's a Chokhmah shel Chadar HaMadrigot, there's a French expression, the things you think after you leave the room. And then the guest goes into, he says, oh yeah, well, the Rabbeinu Nissim already said it. They start a discussion, and Shadal says, yeah, you want to say the Ramban wasn't a Bal Kabbalah Amitit? And the guest says, Chas v'chalila, I'm not going to say a word against the Ramban. Everything the Ramban says is from Rabboteinu HaKadoshim. And then, you know, the whole small book is a dialogue between Shadal and the guest. And the idea is to undermine the authority of Sefer HaZohar. Okay? Both in the sense that some of the things are against Torah. How can you say Hoshana Rabbah? And also, where did it show up? Why didn't we know about it? All things like that. So this is a big argument in the world. But I really want to relate to this topic of Hoshana Rabbah. Because the question about Hoshana Rabbah is a serious question. Who ever heard about Hoshana Rabbah? Okay, now Hoshana Rabbah was a very, very important day in the Mikdash. It was the peak of the celebrations of Sukkot. It was the peak of Ritzui Alamayim, you know, everything we did to earn a good winter. There were 7 hakafot around. A lot of things went on in Hoshana Rabbah, but nobody ever said the kind of things that are being said since the time of the Zohar. Okay, but of course we already said that it was from before the Zohar. It's in a few of Chachmei Ashkenaz, it already appears. In the Rokeach, in Sefer Hasidim, in the Ramban, Sefer Manig later says it. Something there exists, and it's later worded by the Zohar. Okay. After this booklet, Vikuach al HaKabbalah, Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg was also an Italian Chacham, lived a little bit after Shadal. Okay, he passed away 40 years later. He writes a little book, and he calls it Ta'am Lashad. Okay, that's in number 2. And Ta'am Lashad is a quote about the man. Ta'am Lashad Shemen, but Lashad is the reverse of Shadal. Okay, so he's going to answer all the arguments against the Zohar, but he spends a lot of time defending Hoshana Rabbah. Now, I brought a long quote from Shadal and a shorter quote from here, not because I'm taking sides, but because the full text is online, and it took me a very long time to copy from the book of the Ben Amozeg. I didn't have the digital part, and also he brings more elaborate whatever. Specifically here, I bring. He starts out by saying, okay, so if there it was a dialogue between the host and the guest, so now it's a dialogue by someone called Chofni, between someone called Chofni and someone called Pinchas. We can do drashot shemot, it's interesting, but they go back and forth, and Chofni has read the Shadal book, and he wants to hear what Pinchas thinks about it, and Pinchas says, so what do you think about the story? Does it sound credible to you? And Chofni said, that's not a big deal. You know, it's a literary privilege to you can do that. You can make up a story so things work. So Pinchas goes beyond that. He says, yeah, but that guy from Poland, he doesn't believe on Hoshana Rabbah in the current sense at all as a Yom Div. Why does he sit and say the whole tikkun with them, and only when they get to the Iryah he stops? Let him decide. You know, something doesn't work there with the plot is not consistent. And then he goes on, and he starts proving point by point. And one of his strongest points is he says, already in the Torah, Hoshana Rabbah is grouped together with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. What is the most dominant way it's grouped together? It has the exact same korbanot. Okay, just like you would bring on Yom HaZikaron, that's Rosh Hashanah. Just like you bring on Yom Kippurim, that's what you bring on. Okay, so not Hoshana Rabbah. That's what you bring on Shmini Atzeret. Okay, and no other Chag has the exact same korbanot. So what we have bunched together is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, and Shmini Atzeret. And then Chofni straight away says, hey, but we're talking about Hoshana Rabbah, the 7th day, not the 8th day. So he says, first of all, if you look closely at the Zohar, you'll see that the Zohar speaks of the 8th day. Okay? Oh, so why do we do all our tikkunim and our classes on the 7th day? Maybe because we need trinot and filot and shofar and maybe, a little bit stress and crying. It's not fitting for Yom Tov. So we don't do it at Shmini Atzeret, we do it in Hoshana Rabbah. And he continues with a whole list of arguments protecting this idea of course, the Zohar, but of Hoshana Rabbah that's as something that has its roots as a Yom Din early in the Torah. Okay, at least Shmini Atzeret with taken back one day to Hoshana Rabbah. Let's look just for a bit at the Zohar, okay? The Zohar says בלילה בתרה דחגה דכנפקן פתקין בבית מלכא והוא צל העידו מבני גריעו דהי עלמא ההוא נפש דקאמרן אז לה ומשתתה. So there are two mentions of this. In the first one, it describes the night as the night when the notes leave the house of the king. Okay, and it also says that the people for which the din was that they won't survive the year, they somehow lose their shade. Okay, there's a description in the other part of the Zohar that when a person is alive, they also have a shadow, נכון? And when the shadow is taken away, it means that they're no longer protected, and it means that was their din for that year. And this sounds all very, very spooky. The other piece of Zohar, it's a lot of Aramit here, but basically it describes how when there is din in the world, a person starts dealing with tshuva. Now, apparently it's Rosh Hashanah, but it doesn't say exactly that it's Rosh Hashanah. And eventually there are notes being written, like with the probable din. And if a person merits to do proper tshuva, their notes are torn. Apparently whatever was written on the note wasn't good news. And eventually there's Yom Kippurim, and Yom Kippurim also helps because it atones. And if a person did tshuva, it's good. And if not, the king says you should seal the notes. And the text here feels sorry for the person whose tshuva is distancing itself. But if he manages until the last day, that's it. It's the 8th day of the Chag, just like the Kam L'Shad said. If he had proper tshuva shlema before his creator, then you tear the notes. And if not, these notes leave the king's house and they're given to the messengers, to the angels of din, and whatever has to happen will happen, and the notes don't return to the king's house. It's not the end of the Zohar. We'll see the end of the Zohar soon. So we heard one idea that has to do with Shmini Atzeret and the korbanot of Shmini Atzeret, some roots of the continuation of din until Hoshana Rabbah. But we have to say that the first, I think the roots, the strongest roots of this idea of Hoshana Rabbah or of Sukkot as din is already the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah says that b'chag nidonim al hamayim, okay, and water is our most important resource and the most unstable resource in Eretz Yisrael, at least. Okay, and there's something about a Sukkot that's confusing, because on the one hand, it's when our the asamim are full. We brought in all the fruit for months now, and it's the time of year where you feel protected because you have everything you were counting on for the winter. And on the other hand, this is the time of din for water. Okay, and water is the most critical thing that will say something about how this year is going to go, as far as parnasah, as far as health, as far as security, whatever. So this idea of din already clearly exists. It's true that it's kind of masked with a lot of joy. All the way we do ritzui al hamayim. Ritzui is a word that's hard to translate, because on the one hand it has to do with begging, and the other hand it has to do with pleasing. Okay, so for instance, the arba minim, okay, the pshat of what Arba Minim are doing, it's a form of dancing with the branches, yeah? Things that need a lot of water, and it's part of this ritual of ritzui, okay? Begging and pleasing the neshima achad, okay? So I'm saying Sukkot is the happiest holiday, but under that there's a undercurrent of din, right? Serious din. And as we approach the last day, it becomes even more acute. So that's, I'd say, the deepest root. But then, as was already stated, already the Ramban, okay, that's like end of 12th century, beginning of 13th century. He already brings up on the Torah, in the pasuk that describes Sar Tzilam Alehem, their shadow was removed. He already says something about that it is known that here, where is it? Okay. לא יצא לראש האיש אשר ימות בשנה ההיא. וכך יאמר כבר שר צילה מעליהם. He, as part of his commentary, uses this term ליל החותם, right, that we recognize as חיתום דין, and he said, yes, there's something there that people do with checking if you have it's at least a known something in the culture, okay, I'll say that people say if you don't have a shadow on Leil Shana Rabbah, it means that the din is bad, okay? And I'll say, okay, this is a touchy topic, so I don't mean to say anything of kfirah here. It seems like the Zohar is based on ancient mystical traditions that were probably compiled and written by a group of Chachamim, mostly in the Spanish area. But if you want to read Israel Tashma, he shows over and over again that there are, he calls it shki'im, things that were sunk in, quotes from in halakha from Ashkenazi Rishonim. So these ideas that for instance, appear here in the Ramban, and Ramban wasn't Ashkenazi, were known culturally around there. Could be in the Jewish culture, or some claim in the non-Jewish culture. Anyhow, it's brought up in the Zohar, okay? I speak of this on my tippy toes because I know whatever. Similarly, Sefer Hasidim describes this spooky thing of going on Leil Shana, of people going on Leil Shana into the cemetery and hearing the ghosts speak to each other and calling each other to get up and to pray for the community, to pray for the live people. They should stay alive, and even if someone gets a din of not surviving the year, it should be an easy disease, and this whole process there. And they end up with the story of this guy that didn't have a shadow on Leil Shana Rabbah, but he took upon himself tzedakah, tshuva, maasim tovim, and ta'aniyot, and he took it very, very seriously, and he managed to break the spell. Right? There's nothing that stands before tshuva, even if you didn't have the signs show that the din wasn't good on Hoshana Rabbah. Okay, so this is also, even though this becomes very, I don't know, uncommon, the notion that you can still fight it, that there's free choice, that there's tshuva, that there are ways to change the gezerah, even after chitum hadin, already exists here. Okay. The tool here says what we said before, that a person's life depends on water. Now, I just want to show you a few more steps. Okay, so we heard maybe a couple more. We heard by the Sefer Hasidim that even if you discovered that it didn't work well, you could do tshuva. Okay, we would be terribly surprised otherwise. And in Chassidut, for the last 250, or whatever years, there's a new idea that comes up, and that is that the final Chitur is on the 8th day of Hanukkah. So here's one quote. It's a very common idea in Chassidut, but there's one quote here from the 19th century. דהנה ידוע דחנוכה הוא הגמר חתימה של יום הכיפורים, ומיום הכיפורים עד חנוכה, עין ד' ימים בחנוכה, גמר המתקה. There's a way to sweeten the Gzaldin. And just to take it, really to the extreme, there's a quote from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak מברדיצ'ל that says, כי בוודאי אי אפשר להתקיים הפסקים והפתקים כפי שנכתב בראש השנה ויום הכיפורים. אמנם מתמתקים מעט, they slowly, whatever is written in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that's just too severe. But slowly they get sweeter, if you manage to survive. עד גמירה בחנוכה ובפורים. Okay? Yeah. So, on the one hand, there's this very clear idea of Rosh Hashanah Yom Adin and Yom Kippur or whatever. And the other hand, we see some other phenomena, and that is spreading it, giving like in the university, we have Moed Bet, Moed Gimel, Moed Nilfad. So one thing I wanted to look at is the possibility that it has to do with the original Sugya in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. So the original Sugya in Rosh Hashanah is on the Mishnah that said that there are 4 Yamei Din, and then the Gemara starts arguing whose method is, we know it this way, that way, there are different options, and the Gemara it starts out with an interesting question. If the din on Tevuah, on the wheat, is in Pesach, so all these harpatkot, all the adventures that happened to that wheat from Rosh Hashanah until Pesach, when were they decided? Okay? Once you start, you want to make the puzzle very clear, and you say, this is din for this is din for that. And we're not even mentioning questions like, what does it mean, din for fruit or din for Tevuah? Does the Tevuah care? Or it's all din for Adam? How he would be on water, how he would be on fruit, how he would be on Tevuah. But if it's din for Adam, it should have happened on Rosh Hashanah. So we're not even going there. We're just listening to this question of what's the understanding of din? When does din happen? So the Gemara says, whose Mishnah is this? Lo Rabbi Meir, velo Rabbi Yehuda, velo Rabbi Yossi, velo Rabbi Natan. And they start giving examples for each one of these shitot to prove that our Mishnah is not according to them. So I'm skipping Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, and then we get to Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi says, Adam nidon bechol yom, שנאמר ותפקדנו לבקרים. So, according to Rabbi Yossi, contradicting to our Mishnah, din is every morning, or when you get your neshama back, you say Modani, or every day. Okay, we don't know what time of day. Maybe it's in midnight. I don't know. And there's a pasuk. And Rabbi Natan says, Adam nidon bechol sha'a. Okay, so it's online. Okay, and I don't know if it's incremental every hour or it's, how do you say the continuous. Hashem looks at us every minute. אמר רב חיסדא, מה טעמא על ידי רבי יוסי? כדאמר טעמא ותפקדנו לבקרים. Anan hachikaman, my Tama lo Rabbi Natan. Why doesn't he say like Rabbi Natan the regaim? If he's going to say Dave, why doesn't he say moments? That's because Bechina in his eyes is just looking. It's not real din. So Pchida is also looking. Ela amar Rav Chisda, Tamei de Rabbi Yossi mehacha. It's a different pasuk. Lasot mishpat avdo, mishpat amo Yisrael dvar yom biyomo. So forget about tifkedenu lebkarim every morning. Listen to what actually Shlomo HaMelech said. that this happens Dvar Yom Beyomo, every day. Okay, interesting discussion there, not going to go into it, but then there's I find it a mind-boggling question. Amar Rav Yosef, K'mayim metzalin ana'idna aktirei umerei. Translation, according to who, what shita do we hold when we daven for the sick? Why is this a mind-boggling question? Because we're discussing Gzar Din. And maybe if you're sick on Tisha B'Av, right? Appropriate to pronounce it. But you pray, you beg, whatever. Once the din comes, you're. What if you're sick on Rosh Chodesh Shvan? Okay? Why are we all gathering in shul and praying for you? Why are we saying Tehillim? Why are we begging? It's all done. So I'm saying it's a mind-boggling question because it's such an, it's, never occurred to me. But we're talking about Gzar Din, and now we're opening such basic questions. Why do we pray? Why do we beg? If there's Gzar Din, it's a done deal. But as astonishing as astonishing is not the word, but as mind-boggling as the question is, listen to the answer. The answer is, well, actually, there are two possible reasons. Either Keman Rabbi Yossi. It's according to the Shita of Rabbi Yossi that the person has din every day. So if we're going to pray and we'll beg and we'll pray and beg tomorrow morning when he gets din. So first of all, it's amazing because our big Shita is that Rosh Hashanah is Yom HaDin. Okay, everybody agrees. Okay. There's Rabbi Yossi, there's Rabbanit, and there are other shitot, but we all agree that Rosh Hashanah Yom HaDin. So how can we answer this basic question with this? It's according to Rabbi Yossi. So where did Rabbi Yossi show up from? He wasn't mainstream. Or there's another option, and another option is the Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Yafat Tza'aka L'Adam Ben Kodem Gzar Din Ben Lachar Gzar Din. So there's an option of reading this a little bit cynically or ironically. Yafat Tza'aka L'Adam, the person who's yelling, but it seems that's not what Rabbi Yitzchak means. He means, there's Gzar Din, there's Chita, everything's done, everything's there, but if you come and you cry, maybe you can actually sweeten maybe there could be Chanina, pardon. Maybe all of the due process is done, but there are other options. You can weep. Okay? So, what I very, humbly suggest is that maybe this whole notion of pushing din to Hoshana Rabbah, to Chanukah, to Purim, okay, is a reflection or a kind of a echo. It echoes these ideas of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Natan. In other words, in the world of Chazal, there's a very mainstream idea that din is on Rosh Hashanah, and it's the process is over pretty quickly, a few days and it's gone. But there also are other opinions that say every day, that say every moment, and this need of ours to carry it on, to say it echoes opinions that do exist in Chazal. Okay. That din continues, and din is now. I once I learned this Gemara and Chavruta with my friend Michal Tikochinsky, and she's also a Natan graduate. And I was saying this idea that every day you have new din is such an optimistic idea. It's a new page every morning. And she said, "Are you serious? Mapito." She saw it the other way around. She said. She told the story about this guy that he was going into his father-in-law's business, and he had some complaints. So he said he came from a legal training. So he said, "So sue them." And the guy said, "You don't know anything about business. This is a long-term relationship. We we can how do you say yeah, some crises here and there. I don't drag him to court every day. Okay, it's gonna be better. I'm gonna be better. We're here for the long run. Okay, so for her every day dealing with such a strenuous relationship. It was so demanding. It was so, it's such a pressure. Okay, and I thought, a new page every day. And both notions exist in our world. And the notion of Din and Rosh Hashanah and the notion of Din that's carried on. You see, there are like 2 more pages we didn't touch yet. What I wanted to ask here is, so what is a person in a very, I don't know, existential sense, okay? What does this mean to us? Okay? Sometimes some teachers more than others, but some Rabbanim and Rabbaniyot like to emphasize in their shiur, and tomorrow 2:42 this Shat Ratzon for, I don't know, whatever the issue is, Ravakot, whatever. Don't miss that Shat Ratzon. And whenever I hear it, it feels a little bit ambivalent, because you understand there are 2 issues. One is, maybe it's a real understanding, a mystical even understanding or tradition, that there's a special time, right? And you have to use a special time, you can't miss it. And the other time, there's almost a sales gag going on, like there's a sale, right? There's a special opportunity. You always end up buying in the sale things you never intended, right? So it pushes us the extra mile, like to pick ourselves together and to do the extra thing, because there's a Shat Ratzon and we don't want to miss out. Okay, so I'm not questioning the authenticity of such a thing, but it works both ways. It works maybe because simple, that's a special occasion, and also because let's recruit ourselves. Okay? Now, when we relate to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, whatever, first of all, our tradition is that these are Yomei Din, and the Torah clearly says about Rosh Hashanah, it hints, and about Yom Kippurim, it clearly says it's a chance for atonement, and for us it's a clear reality. Hey, I'm not gonna say anything to lesser that. But then it's gone, and we're on Hoshana Rabbah, and we're after Hoshana Rabbah. And then maybe the state of mind that says, but there's also Din every day. There's Din maybe every moment, okay? In both meanings of it, it's a new chance, and it's also, we're being watched. What does that mean to us? And if this metaphor of the notes, so something was written on the note, and the note was put down, face down, and you have no idea what was written there. And what does that mean to us? It reminded me of this notion in Masechet Brachot of a person that dreams a dream, and they don't know if it's a good dream or a bad dream, and there are different ways of dealing with it. One is to go to people to solve the dream, and then the Gemara is scared by that. It says, solve the dream. You don't want them to solve the dream for you, because if they'll, whatever they say, it could affect. So you ask them to better the dream. You do hatavat chalom. Or you ask a person, it says there, once you say what you think it means, that might happen. Or you say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm yours and my dreams are yours. If they need, heal them like the dream of so and so. If they're true, if they're good, make them happen, whatever. And it's like you surrender yourself, the note. Okay. Basically, what I want to say is, in our life, there is a kind of a double consciousness. Okay? One is this tremendous effort around Yomim Noraim, like giving it our utmost. And then there's afterwards. And afterwards, on the one hand, there are more and more and more chances for Deen and for sweetening the Deen and for working with it in the rest of the year. We don't say, it's done. Okay? And there's also a lot of meaning to what we believe about that Deen. Okay? I'll just, because I'll just, choose a couple of things to say something about that, okay? About the way we perceive what the Gzar Din is or should be, or one thing is, this the feeling when you stand on Netaneh Tokef and they say, Michyeh u'mi'amut u'bekitzor u'milo bekitzor, and you say, last year we were standing here and we didn't know that, right? It always happens. And every year something new gets a feel, Magifa, whatever. And I remember being upset with this notion of Milo bekitzor. What is kitzor? So we thought this is kitzor. We didn't think it was, but it was upsetting to me. And then I met this midrash that, again, you can read all these sources if you're interested in Hebrew at home. But basically, it says there's this guy that invites people to the Brit Milah of his son, and he brings out a very quality, very good wine, and then he says, "Ma'yayin hazeh ayashen lachupa shel bni." I will age this wine to use in his chuppah. And then the Chacham that was there, Bishimon ben Chalafta, I think, says he goes outside and he meets some kind of devil, sort of Malach HaMavet, something like that. And Malach HaMavet looks very upset. So he says, "Oh, why do you look so upset?" And says, he says he's going to age the wine for years, whatever. He doesn't know that in 30 days I'm coming to pick him up. So Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta says, "Oh, really? You have everybody's dates? So what's mine?" And the Malach HaMavet turns to him and he says, guys like you, like they mess up my job. He says, "לא עליך ועל כיוצא בך אני שולט. פעמים שהקדוש ברוך הוא חפץ במעשיכם הטובים, הוא מוסיף לכם חיים שנאמר יראת השם תוסיף ימים. וכן הוא אומר יקר בעיני השם אמרת לחסידה." He says, I can't predict guys like you. Sometimes Hashem is so happy with what you do in the world, he wants more of it. So it dawned on me that, lo bekitzor, we always think of kitzur yamim. But lo bekitzor, maybe there's stuff we can do, and lo bekitzor is the other way around. Okay? It has to do with the way we perceive our lichut around here, okay? Our mission. Okay? Maybe there's much more to do. There's this famous story of Rav Steinsaltz that was upset that all the tzulerim and slichot and makor chaim were like, making these long faces. And he says, sins are boring. You have something important to correct, just go out and correct it. But good deeds, wow. There's no end to the creative options of new wonderful things you could create in the world. And it was like, that's a twist in my thought. What am I doing around here? What was written in my notes? Okay. This is cruel. I'll repeat something I said last year, and I asked for forgiveness. We spoke about this notion that appears in Masechet Brachot, and of Rava that said that what we know as a piyut, עד שלא נוצרתי איני כדאי, עכשיו שנוצרתי כאילו לא נוצרתי, עפר אני בחיי, קל וחומר במיתתי. I am worthless, it wasn't kedai. And then Rav Kook, surprisingly, actually says that thing of your birthday is the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided the world can't go on without you. Because he says exactly that. He says, yeah, apparently before you were around, it wasn't worth it to bring you, but now that you're here, it's because somebody wanted you to be here, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu believed in your role while you're here. And if you're still around, it's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu thinks it's worth it. Okay? And then we brought this beautiful private tefillah that Rav Tamir Gralot was just like suggesting to his students. He was saying, Kedai is there are different sides to it. I want to also say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you put me here in this finite world, but my soul is infinite, and my dreams are infinite, and my aspirations are infinite. And eventually he ends up saying, just the end, he says, this doesn't appear by you. Because I remembered I said it last year. He says, יכול אני לומר לפניך ריבונו של עולם, אני שמח בך, ואתה יכול לשמוח בי. אכן אני כדאי. ריבונו של עולם היה כדאי. ובעזרתך יתברך גם יהיה כדאי. You can make it worth it. So, I'll end with the נתיבות שלו, ראשי הירש הנתיבות שלו. The ראשי הירש and the pasuk from Parashat HaTshuvah that says, העדותי בכם היום את השמיים ואת הארץ, החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך, הברכה והקללה, ובחרת בחיים למען תחיה אתה וזרעך. בחרת בחיים למען תחיה. So ראשי הירש there says, ובחרת בחיים למען תחיה. What do you mean? To choose life so you could live? אין אדם זוכה בחיים בלא דעת ובלא רצון ובדרך מקרה. You don't just chance to have a life. אלא יש צורך לרצות ולהחליט בכובד ראש. עליך לבחור בחיים עם רצונך לחיות. There's something there that has to do with choosing the life. You don't know what's written in the note, but it's our role every day after Hoshana Rabbah till next Elul and Tishrei to choose B'charta b'chaim, to make it worthwhile. And the last thing I'll show you is the Netivot Shalom. It's quite famous, but he says this. He says, מפורש בספר הקדוש תולדות יעקב יוסף. It's from the students of Baal Shem Tov. מחז"ל 3 ספרים נפתחים בראש השנה, צדיקים גמורים, נחתמים לאלתר, לחיים וכולי, the 3 books open. היינו שפותחים 3 ספרים חדשים, שכל אחד רושם את עצמו לשנה החדשה באיזה שרוצה. You hear that? היינו שפותחים 3 ספרים חדשים, שכל אחד רושם את עצמו לשנה החדשה באיזה שרוצה. ואם מקבל עליו לשנה החדשה להיות נמנה בין הצדיקים ושימלא ייעודו ותפקידו בעולמו, מעתה על ידי זה נכתבים ונחתמים לאלתר ולחיים. It's like there was Hawaii 5-0, I'm dating myself terribly. It was something, this is your mission if you choose to take it. היה משהו כזה. Mission impossible, okay. So he says, if you choose to take it, you're נחתמת לחיים. And when we speak of deen that doesn't just end at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but goes on throughout the year, it's a daily choice. Okay? לכתוב את עצמך בספר החיים, to accept the mission the way it is. The end of the Zohar that we quoted before says, it says, there's a story with a note and the shadow and all that spooky stuff. And then it ends, אבל זכאי חסידי בכל יום ויומא מסתכלי בליבי הוא. But the חסידים הצדיקים, every day they look into their heart. כאילו הוא יום המסתלקים מעלמא, as if it's their last day. ועבדין דיובתא שלמתא קמי מהרי הון, and they do תשובה שלמה in front of their God, of their creator. ולא יצטרכו למילה אחרה, and then they don't need anything else. אשרי חלקם בעולם הזה ובעולם הבא. שנה טובה.